Oh, hey, Alice. Fancy seeing you here. Dropped in at a good time. I got Adrian Sanders here with me. Thanks for being here, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you do the jam at Underdog sometimes, first Fridays.
Yeah, that's a recent thing, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the last two times I went there, you were jamming. It was really awesome. Do
Yeah,
you help curate? Like, do you know a lot of the guys getting up there playing with you?
yeah, all those guys are people I've either knew before I moved to Nashville or I met here, and I've been playing music with on and off for the 2 years that I've been here.
Nice. What kind of music your parents listened to when you were a kid?
My both my parents listen to classical music, but my dad liked listening to B.B. King, Eric Clapton. He really liked Prince, all kinds of stuff. My mom was a huge Michael Jackson fan, and she liked Nora Jones. She would always play John Mayer's like first couple CDs when they came out in the early 2000s as well, along with like early Maroon 5. Back when it was that I don't want to say back when they were good, but I guess yeah, back when they were good.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, so just an array of stuff. But I came up listening to a lot of classical music.
Okay.
Honestly, because we're raised Seventh Day Adventists, and
Oh, okay.
secular music was slowly introduced.
Yeah. Um, so I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh yeah,
I was also homeschooled.
me
So,
too.
really?
Homeschooled until high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
until 2 years into high school,
Wow.
and then I
Okay,
did
so you spent your last couple years in public school?
in community college. It was a dual enrollment program where you get an associate's degree and finish your high school diploma in 2 years. So that was kind of like my first
Yeah.
immersion into school.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, okay, it's very similar upbringings
Yeah.
then. What kind of what doctrine is Seventh Day Adventist? Do they believe in hell?
They No, I don't think they believe in hell. They believe that Sabbath is on Saturday, the 7 days on Saturday, and that
Okay.
the rest of the denominations have it wrong. And this makes a big difference, I think, for some reason. And also, you have to follow kosher eating rules, so no shellfish, like pork, and
Gotcha.
certain types of no things with hooves. I forget the exact specifications, but limited diet, and then traditionally like very conservative lifestyle and dress, and like it's very interesting. They're kind of waiting just for the second coming,
Yeah.
and like everything is going to be better then, and it's kind of shitty now. It's kind of the
Yeah.
outlook compared to some other religions where it's make the most out of this experience, which I kind of feel that way more than
Yeah.
what the Seventh Day Adventists would. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I understand the good underlying things about it.
Mhm. It took me a long time to get there. Like when I
Yeah,
turned 18 and moved out, like I'm 27 now, and like from the time I was like 18 to like 23, like I was like very very like in your face atheist,
yeah,
like obnoxiously atheist.
yeah. Like we're
And
gonna die, and that's it. You're gonna
yeah,
rot.
and it took me a while to like have an appreciation for scripture again.
Yeah,
At this point in my life, I'm like that there's like some really, which we can get into it later, but there's a lot of really profound stuff in there. And I think it's like one of the most if not the most like important artifact, historical artifact.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree.
Yeah, and so like my problem now is I'm like, this is the most profound thing ever written, but no one understands it.
Hmm.
Like they think this literally happened, and
Everybody
it's like,
interpreted so like
yeah,
harshly
yeah,
and decides, okay, well, and then lives their entire life and tells other people to live their lives based off of their interpretation. And like in church, my dad, because he studied theology
hmm.
along with other things, he studied archaeology, and part of it was like learning Hebrew. So he would have a Hebrew Bible and he'd be reading and he would be like, it's interesting because to me this seems mistranslated like
Hmm.
here and here, and this is like completely different meaning. Or
Yeah,
there would be a whole sermon based off of a Hebrew word, and he'd be like, that's taken out of context. There's things like this. And so then you start to think, over all these different translations, obviously things have been taken out of meaning,
yeah,
and then you have other uh, religious texts that have similar historical
hmm,
events in it, like the flood is like
yeah, like
recorded in other.
Mesopotamian like Epic of Gilgamesh has a
Yeah.
flood story. It's directly what's it. That's I'm glad you brought that up. The in the biblical flood story, God makes a rainbow as a sign of like peace between him and the earth.
Yeah.
But in the original one, the god is an archer, so it's a sign of him hanging his bow up. He was like
Oh.
specifically an archer. So like that's just another example of like where it's like shit has already, even with the creation of it, shit has gotten mistranslated. And so like from the get-go it's like this.
Yeah,
And then it's the
exactly.
further away we get from it, different languages, the meaning's like really lost along
Yeah,
the
there's a
way.
chance for more and more meanings to be interpreted, and
Yeah,
the original intended meaning, or like what actually happened, because like somebody could just look up in the sky and be like, oh shit, it's a bow, and someone else is like, it's a rainbow. It's
yeah,
like the most important thing to take from that to me, it's like there's obviously something true about this story in some way or
mm,
another, because there's like prosody between different religions that would disagree with each other, but they're recording the same like historical event.
yeah,
So at least there's a value of like historical recording
sure.
in these scripture and these biblical texts.
Yeah, it's like it's there's definitely something to it, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
There's this thing called gematria. Like there in Hebrew gematria, there's um things called chiasms or
Hmm.
chiastic literature, and it's like um they had this concept like in the Talmud. There's a story about this guy who makes a man out of clay, and then he puts the name of God in its mouth, and it
Hmm.
comes to life. It protects the village, and that's like the first golem. Well, um, these like ancient rabbis were really serious about, they're like, if we tell a story in a specific way, you can bind a spirit to, I mean, yeah, like to the narrative.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're like, you can put, so like the word Torah is the Hebrew word for binding.
Hmm.
And it's like, it is just, we're binding. And then like in the New Testament, Jesus calls the Old Testament the living word of God.
Right.
And Christians don't stop to think about what he means there, but he's saying this is alive. And they do talk about it. He does talk about how like there's the Holy Spirit lives inside the text.
Right.
And like I think these were people tapped into an ancient alien technology of storytelling. They understood storytelling in a way that we've kind of lost sight of.
Hmm.
But this gets even more interesting because tarot cards follow the exact same formula that the Old Testament does. It's the
Oh,
same
really?
patterns that the Hebrews were using. They use in the system of this card story.
Hmm.
And what's crazy is like there's a thing called bibliomancy. Like I opened up the Bible. I was having a bad day. Opened up the Bible to a random page, and the first thing I saw was exactly what I needed to hear. It changed my
Right.
whole life around. Like
Yeah.
there's a bunch of people with stories like that.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing if you were shuffling tarot cards and you just pulled one out.
Oh, okay.
So there's something about, and so like Alice in Wonderland does the same thing. The Lewis Carroll was an Oxford theologian, and he definitely would have known about these chiasm things I'm talking about. So like anyway, you can say like you can make this even like a metaphorical like psychology thing where it's like you just the spirit of these characters that are going through these hardships,
Mhm.
like just the idea and the spirit of that, like possessed you. You can, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be so spiritual,
Right.
but like the people who originally came up with this were really fucking serious about it.
Yeah.
So it's like I think in a lot of ways we like to think we're getting smarter, but like because we have all these great works of technology, but like I don't know how to build a phone. I couldn't
Yeah.
make that on my own.
It's not actually in our hands, like
Yeah.
this kind of like higher spiritual being in touch with that higher spiritual power would kind of make you empowered, I guess. Where do tarot cards? What's their origin? Or like, I basically know nothing
Yeah,
about
I
tarot
think
cards.
I want to say it's French.
Oh, okay.
And like 1200,
Okay.
1400, maybe something like that.
And what exactly is the purpose of tarot cards?
So it's it's a type of magic called divination where basically you're divining the future. It's the same thing they do in the Old Testament where was it Moses? Think it was Moses, had the two stones, Urim and Thummim, and they
Hmm.
felt the same, but one was white and one was black. So the thing is, you put them in a bag and you ask a yes or no question, and if you get the white one, the answer is yes. The black one, it's fortune telling.
Oh, okay.
Tarot is fortune telling. You're the idea, and you can again, this is something you can make. You can explain these things without talking about it in a magical way.
Hmm.
You could say like, you didn't realize what you were doing, but you pulled somehow like you like especially if you look at all the cards, then you shuffle them. You could
Yeah.
there's still an argument to be made that you shuffled them in such a way that you pulled the one that you didn't realize you did it, but
Right.
subconsciously you did this, or you just took a meaning out of it that wasn't really there because
That's what you wanted
yeah,
and you needed. Yeah.
yeah. And I don't think those are wrong answers. I think when we talk about whether there are spirits or whether people are like schizophrenic
Hmm.
is not, I don't think it's so yes or no, like white and black.
Right.
I think what's in my head is in my head, but it also exists somewhere else.
Hmm.
And then like when you think about it, you connect with this thing.
Yeah.
Um, I was looking up tarot cards. While I'm doing that, have you ever experienced anything like supernatural or something that made you like that? Like looking back, you're like, I don't really know exactly what happened.
Uh, I definitely, I definitely feel like when loved ones of mine have passed away, or even like my childhood dog, that then when I had gone to sleep, like every single time the next night or the next time I went to sleep, I'd always have like this really vivid dream where I was kind of like exchanging something with them, even if it wasn't words. And then like I woke up and just I definitely feel like visited by their presence, even though that's something I can't really like confirm in any type of
Hmm.
real way, but just in that period. And then uh I guess it's just the way they live in your mind, probably, you
Yeah.
know, it could be explained kind of objectively, scientifically that way. They're just the memory is kind of still lingering, but it's always like super vivid the first time I go to sleep.
Hmm.
And even like if something sometimes I just get like a horrible pit feeling, like into my intuition tells me something horrible has happened, and then like some misfortune has happened to somebody I know or a loved one. That's
Hmm.
happened like a few times. But then that makes you get weird anxiety about like buying into paranoid thoughts or feelings
Hmm.
because you're like, well, my intuition was dead on that time and I didn't believe myself. So I definitely wonder like where does this intuition or these kind of sometimes a lot of the time I have deja vu that's really intense and it can go on for like 45 seconds to a minute.
Hmm.
It's happened like 10 times in the last 2 years, which is like more than it had before that. And it's like I'm thinking, always thinking about my future more than I was, I guess, when I was younger. And I'm like, deja vu is just kind of the feeling like I dreamt that this moment already happened. And then it's kind of makes you trip out about time.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means or what it is, but
Yeah. I think there might be something to said about that, like being on a correct path, like synchronicity. It's like you're, how do I explain that? Like maybe that's a good sign, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of synchronicity that is like just random and weird, and it just makes me think like, oh, really small world. But like when I started playing guitar and getting into music, I was a huge fan of Jack White and
Mm.
like just learn all the Jack White songs and would just jam on that pretty much. And Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys. And then I moved
Yeah.
here, and the first place I play is Franklin, and like the place where like people probably know my guitar playing best is like Kimbrough's Pig and Parlor in
I
Franklin.
love Kimbros.
And then Jack White lives in that town, and like
Yeah.
it's just random, because I
Mm.
go to Berkeley, I get more into like jazz styling sounds,
Yeah.
and you kind of get away from Jack White stylistically, and I don't even really listen to him that much anymore. And then I end up hanging out like 20 minutes from his house, and Dan Auerbach's got a studio there, and it's just random things like that, or like uh, just you meet people who like I always watch this one John Mayer, Keith Urban concert, and then I meet like one of my good friends who's like hooked me up with some studio opportunities and different things like this. He was like there when he was 12 years old and
Mm.
like witnessed it, and it's just like I guess it's just the kind of collective consciousness aspect of art and music where you're all inspired by the same
Mm.
thing. You end up together randomly 10 years after being inspired by the same thing, and you have some kind of unspoken bond because of it.
Yeah.
It feels like synchronicity in some kind of way.
Yeah. I agree. There's something about like Nashville has like a very drawing effect to it, and I think like so um Native Americans didn't live here.
Oh, really?
This was a burial ground. They like traveled long distance to bury people here.
In Nashville
Yeah.
specifically?
Hmm.
Wow.
And then settlers were the first ones to settle here. Um, yeah.
So that's not good, right?
So that's just, it makes me wonder about like this power vacuum that exists where it just pulls things in.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing, right? Like I love the scene we have here. Like I feel
Yeah.
the same way. Like I meet like the people that like you're supposed to like fall in with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like yeah, like it's kind of almost like The Shining, or like things just resonate with each other. Like
Hmm.
we have a good like group of friends,
Yeah.
and like that all just came together.
Yeah,
Like
natural, organically.
yeah,
Everything kind of just ebbs and flows in a special way that it wouldn't somewhere
yeah.
else.
There's something else to be said about like a lot of my best friends that have this gravitational ability are pretty conscious.
Yeah.
They're conscious individuals that are aware of themselves and others,
Yeah.
um, very present in mind. Um, have you ever had any psychedelic experiences?
Yeah, I have. But I'm a little scared of it, I guess, to be honest. Like
Yeah. Oh, dude, I know what you
I
mean.
have a lot of respect for it's not like, having a beer or something or smoking a
No.
joint. It's some people can get down with it like that, but not me. My brain's already kind of going 100 miles an hour a lot of the
Yeah.
time. So that just opens, I mean, literally neurologically, it's connecting neural
Hmm.
pathways, and parts of my brain are working together that weren't working together before.
Yeah.
And that's great for neuroplasticity. And, it basically puts you in a great state afterwards to change and
Mm.
improve on your habits. Or I've even like experienced getting significantly better uh, at like guitar, honestly, just from
Yeah.
like playing guitar for the entire duration of a psychedelic
Hmm.
experience, pretty much. So I think it can be beneficial for that, but it also can be, it's just like, it's so powerful
It can
that,
be really scary, and we don't actually understand what the negative side effects potentially.
yeah, exactly.
I've done DMT a bunch, and the last time I did it, I don't say any of this to like defer anybody from doing it. Like, do whatever you want. Don't let me or the government or anyone else tell you what you can and can't do. But like, I don't know if I'll ever do it again, because I, I, I understand now that we're not, like we're opening a door to something that probably actually exists.
Mm.
I don't think it's a hallucination when it's something like DMT. Um, and I think we don't really know. It's I think it's a vehicle. I think it pulls you out, and where you end up could be like completely random. So
Right.
like it could be like heaven and this amazing experience, or it could be like something that has ill intentions towards you.
Yeah, it could be like hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about DMT is like the fact that it's found in our bodies and
Hmm.
it's secreted in the lungs, and that when you die, as far as I understand, it's released in your brain. And so near death experiences can be kind of explained through a
Yeah.
shot of DMT, which is, as far as I've heard, identical to a DMT experience in some ways, like is what some people say.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
I've never done DMT. I'm definitely, that's one I think like it's, I don't want to go out of my body. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I'm guess I'm too scared of that.
It's scarier the second time.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any easier because now if you do it again, you're like, oh shit, I know what I'm about to get into.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think for me, it causes me like so much anxiety.
Yeah.
Like the first time, I also like it took strength to build up to. Doing it after that was like, I don't like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, if it's secreted by your brain when you're dying, and people have said it's like the spirit molecule and it's like a gateway to the afterlife. It's like, do I want to shoot into the afterlife
Mm.
right now? No, because personally, like when I die, I'll go there.
I think it's good for people that have like a really rigid mindset about
True.
the world, where
Yeah.
it's like, I'm an atheist, there's nothing after me. That's like, okay,
Here
take
is,
this.
yeah. Then you'll
Like,
have like an afterlife experience and then come back
yeah,
and
anyone who's like really sure of their point of view, I think psychedelic, not just DMT, but like mushrooms, like it, like I think it also makes you more susceptible. Like I've done a lot of work with what I would consider spirits, like with Ouija boards and things like that,
mm,
and all of that stuff is heightened, like if you're on something like mushrooms or LSD. And I think it's because you are more susceptible to something weird happening.
yeah,
Like you're already like that's part of the package, like you signed up for that. Like
yeah,
it might change the way I look at shit.
yeah,
And so like I think children and people on psychedelics are a little bit more less rigid. Like as we grow older and our brains are fully developed, it's like I have a pretty good understanding of what reality is.
right.
And it's going to be hard for something to change the way I look at that.
Right. Like your brain, when you drive to work, like you don't ever like see everything on your route, but eventually your brain is just assuming what's there. So you're not even interested in looking or like your own face in the mirror. Like you don't actually see it the way other people see
Yeah.
it because your brain has, or anything, you know what I mean? Your
Mm-hmm.
brain is filling in the gaps of what you're not actually needing to take in because your brain's saying we don't actually need to use this brain power to take in that random like I never looked at that book right there until
Yeah.
right then, you know, because it's not important.
It's
My brain
not, yeah.
hasn't categorized it as important. Whereas like where are the exits and the lights? I paid attention to that, you know what I mean? Just without
Yeah.
thinking. And psychedelics make your brain in your consciousness so wide that like everything is, you can't delineate between what is important information and what's not
Mm.
important information. I think everything is like you can have an intense meaning.
You're
And
right.
so like but then the meaningful things are more heightened because everything's heightened. But I forget what my point was, but that's just like an aspect of
That's an
the,
aspect I hadn't considered, is that you can't understand what is significant or isn't. Because now that you mention it, I'll attribute like a significance to um like an object,
yeah,
or like I get this thing, man, where especially if I'm like tripping, when I feel it coming on, like feel the trip coming on, I'll get just like this awareness of like a corner of the room, or like somewhere near me, as if like there was someone standing there, and I don't see anything, but
it's like that feeling like someone's in the corner and like
yeah,
you just kind of look.
it's like something at the only way I could explain it, like because it's not one of the five senses, So explaining it with any of the five senses is not going to be adequate.
Yeah.
But it's like a cold or like a quiet that's like so quiet that it has a presence to it.
Yeah.
And like I'll pick up on that, and um I feel as if there's an energy to that. Like I
Yeah.
said, I've done experiences with like Ouija boards and things like that. And I think again, like uh, saying it's all in your mind is like I've never seen poltergeist activity, never
Mhm.
seen something levitate, and I'm actively searching for these kind of experiences. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to. I like going in abandoned places. Like, hey, show me something,
Yeah.
right? But like I've never experienced something like that. So when you say it's all in your mind, I think that's true. But something has gotten into your mind. So it's like when you're all at a board, it's like you are moving it,
Mhm.
but there is something using you as an avatar to move this thing. And it's
Right.
not just you, it's everyone in the circle.
So yeah, I get what you're saying. Like basically, um, you're not just hallucinating. You're being a conduit of a higher spirit or some
Yeah.
type of energy that is influencing you. Like Cat Williams can't be influenced to just do something. And like I think a lot of people believe in that. People might be listening and be like kind of skeptical, but then think about your own beliefs. Like if you're a Christian and you
Mm.
believe that God is going to that you're a conduit to God's will. It's the
Same
same.
thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then like Jesus will call upon people to be possessed by this Holy Spirit. And
Right.
they don't think about it in the same terms of being possessed by a different kind of spirit.
And Pentecostal, not to call anybody out, but just think about that kind of activity. And if you switched it from God to a demon, everybody would be freaking the fuck out.
Are your parents still religious?
Yeah. And I think they're very like spiritual people who are very open-minded and they're just Generation Steve Seventh-day Adventists, so they enjoy the traditions. They don't even necessarily go to church as Seventh-day Adventists at all anymore, or even talk about Seventh Day or follow that or eat. They've opened their minds and they're very accepting and loving people, and I think their spirituality is a lot more broad than that. So I wouldn't confine them to that, even if they might.
That's awesome. Um, my parents are also, I have a good relationship with them. My sister is what's called a regular pioneer, which means she knocks on people's doors 70 hours a month. Like, um, and they're not really supposed to talk to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like it's not allowed.
In their religion?
Yeah.
Because you're not a believer.
But yeah.
Wow.
Well, specifically because I left. It's
So
it's
you're
worse than not
banished.
Yeah.
They can actually banish people.
Yeah. It's called being disfellowshipped.
And so you're not allowed back?
I've never actually been disfellowshipped, but if I were to step foot in one, I would immediately be.
Okay, they're just waiting on the next time.
Yeah, because I did when I left, I just never went back.
Yeah.
It only really happens when you leave and then come back.
And they get the chance to serve you.
Exactly. Yeah, you'll hit sit before some elders and they'll come to a decision on it. Yeah, but yet that trial has to happen before you can be disfellowshipped. I just never went back for that.
Wild.
But even if I was, I would still have a good relationship with them because they're very spiritual. They're Christians for the right reasons. It's not a social thing. They're trying to. I think it's. I obviously, because I don't believe it, I think it's misguided. I think these are a lot of really good people. Most Christians.
Yeah, definitely.
Really
They're good-hearted people. The majority,
Yeah. Except I think my problem with all of it, with every denomination, is this needs to be a conversation. You're not going to tell me what it is or isn't. We can talk about whether that's. Hey, we're filming. Whoa. Whoa. It's okay. I'll edit it out. What were we talking about?
Definitely like denominations and you're being disfellowshipped.
Yeah. So it should be a conversation. Like someone can't stand above 70 people and dictate what the Bible is. Like it has to be like we can talk about this.
Yeah.
But like as soon as you have a doctrine where it's like this is what it is, it's like I have an issue with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it should be everybody's interpretation is as good
Mhm.
as anyone else's at first glance, and we can examine it closer together.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean I'm going to convince you or you're going to convince me, which is what it does, how that actually happens in the church. Like I go to Sabbath school and I'm like, I don't know if I take the same meaning from this. And they try to convince me to take their meaning from it for the rest of it. And me and my brother used to get in trouble in church for having debates in Sabbath school because in our mind we were like, wasn't this the whole point of this kind of fellowship or reading, studying the spiritual text together would be to examine it and
mm,
debate, and I'll say what I think about it, you say what you think, but it would be like you're not conforming to the youth pastor, or the youth pastor ends up not liking my
mm,
older brother because he's trying to teach the class, but really he's just a strong-minded individual
mhm.
who is actually thinking critically about what he's reading and also feels fine sharing his opinion.
Yeah,
And that's not the vibe of these denominational churches.
you'll probably understand this really well too. But leaving had being a part of a cult and then leaving has given me this insight that oh wait a minute, everything is a religious cult.
Yeah,
Like politics are a religious cult, and that's scary because like if your god is the RNC or the DNC, and then like that god is not like a biblical god, it's not in stone, it's
yeah,
malleable, it changes. So it's
right,
like if you're identifying with this thing and then it changes its views, are you really going to say you're probably just going to go along with the party thing? This is fine. Humans are tribal, I think, is what the answer
mm-hmm.
is. And this is fine when we're talking about sports. You can still root for your shitty team.
Right,
It doesn't matter if they're win or lose, but we're
yeah,
talking about the origins of the universe, or we're talking about how we should behave as a society. What
yeah,
like those are not things to like dig your heels in. Like I'm this. It's like no, you're a human being who's been brainwashed. Just think for yourself.
right. Like the majority of people's adults, and especially young adults, probably viewpoints are like directly tied to their parents' viewpoints or the type of public school or private school
Yeah,
system they came up in.
or the university.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, or exactly what their peers think. And I mean, psychologically, it's true that you kind of absorb a lot of the behavior of like the two or three people you spend the most time with. So it's just natural that we have this, like you're saying, this tribal mentality. That's how we
Mm,
survived, in the past, but we don't need that anymore. And it happens on such a large scale because there's so many people, and its communication flows so easily with social media and iPhones and everything. So this exchange of information is like extremely high, but there's still like such a small amount of ideas being exchanged. They just become
yeah.
mainstream, and like there's these huge wide streams for these like five or six ideas, and it's like there's all these people with these other ideas, and they're kind of like settling for less to hop on one train of thought or the other because it's this binary of like, because like the politics sets up with like a two-party system. It's like this team or that team, and it is like football, that level of tribalism with the election where it's like,
Mhm.
fuck you, like my guy's gonna
You're
win.
a bad person if you
Yeah,
don't go for the team that I do.
yeah, and it's like we're all American citizens. This is the United States. It's not the United States the way people act about politics. You know what I mean? It's the divided states. It's like
Mm,
we if we're fighting with each other about like what old bimbo to elect instead of setting up some type of better system so that
mm,
we're not in a situation like that in the next 4 years, that's just how you get further behind on
yeah.
a global scale. And then it's a global safety issue that we're fighting with each other because then at the same time other countries are thinking on like colonization kind of level, and we're just not. It's a shame because
Mm,
America has such great potential,
yeah.
and it should be everything that it's purported to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been hijacked. It's been the people that run the country don't care about the country. In fact, they benefit from its downfall. And my only real political stance is I hate the government. I fucking hate the government. And that's bipartisan. It's like I don't
Yeah.
care who you are, like no one. I don't think if I believed in the system, like I'd get into like law or politics, but I don't. I think it's corrupt all the way. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't think we have a vote in our elections. I don't think, and that's again, that's bipartisan. It's not a specific election. I think that's at least since Clinton's, like since I've been around, like there's not been a real election.
Yeah,
Um,
you think it's like it's all just the kind of way to keep us
mhm. Yeah,
on the hamster wheel.
and it flip flops so that like we each get to have a turn. Like each side gets a turn.
Everybody feels like
Yeah,
they're getting ahead.
yeah. And if I hate it so much, like, well, it's gonna change depending on my vote. Like I'm participating in the system, but it's just a way to keep us involved because if we feel like we have a choice, then we won't realize that we're being tricked. But
Yeah.
it's just one puppet master with two puppets
Yeah.
making them fight each other.
I definitely don't know what's going on with American politics, but I know that like the viewpoint from other, especially like European people I know who live in Europe, is that it's extremely corrupt and we're kind of getting duped one way or another, like you're saying. And it's just bizarre to me the amount of like personal identity that people put into these things, like, either being a Trump supporter or supporting Biden or another Democrat. They put in so much, almost their entire like identity on social media in real life in conversations. They even start to just repeat things that different talking heads have said from either side. You know what I mean? Whether it's Anderson Cooper or it's Tucker Carlson, they
Mhm.
start talking. You're like, I know I've heard that phrase on Fox News or CNN, and you're like, how unoriginal are we becoming or hive minded directly from some type of mass media? And you got both sides shaming the mass media. These are all huge Fortune 500
Mhm.
companies, I'm sure, you know what I mean, that
Yeah.
control a huge amount of the media.
Yeah. And then I think in now that we're in the information age, like I mean, there's a lot of problems with it. We have a lot of misinformation and disinformation. I heard a new one the other day, malinformation,
There we go.
malicious information, which I don't anyway.
Yeah.
But like also like it's impossible for something like Scientology or like it's impossible for any organization, whether it be religious or government, to have a secret. Like everything's getting out there.
Yeah.
That's why like Scientology reports they still have like millions of members, but they're actually down to like 37,000. It's
Wow.
like it's gone down significantly in the last couple of decades because everyone's criticizing it.
Yeah.
They used to say you can find because Scientology is a mystery religion. They teach it to you in steps. It's like
Really,
so
I don't know anything about Scientology.
it's tier based. So
Okay.
you get to a level where you're allowed to know more. So there's always a chase. It's like I'm getting closer to the truth.
Right.
But the internet happens and these things get leaked. So you can
Right.
just go find out what Scientology is all about.
Wow.
And now you know more about Scientology than Scientologists do.
Yeah, because they haven't gotten to that level
Yeah.
yet.
And it's like they can't keep that, they can't do anything with that anymore.
Yeah, the lore is gone because of the
Yeah.
access of information.
Yeah. So I think all the cults and like shadow organizations are having a much harder time now than they used to.
Yeah, the
And
business model doesn't work.
yeah, and they're working towards something, but I think it's been like expedited because it's getting harder to keep control on shit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's wild that it really blows my mind actually that people still participate in this left right game.
Yeah. Like, no matter what you believe spiritually or politically, just think about it this way. How much fucking time are you wasting in your real life when you're an old person and you're on your deathbed? Are you going to appreciate the times you spent screaming at the TV and being enraged? I know that I'm not, and I know I've done
Yeah.
it, and I'll probably do it again. But and people who know me will be like, "You fucking rant about politics all the time,"
Mm.
and it is because there's certain injustices that are like ruining people's
Oh,
lives that
sure.
really upset me.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues for sure.
But talking about the or who's, that whole game of who's better, and like not and just denying that it's pretty grim no matter what, especially
Yeah,
recently with the options, and just acting like either of these things are good. That's just denial, and it's quick. You're
yeah.
gonna you're gonna be sorry that you wasted your time like that. I think, like,
Dude, they killed JFK in a parade being broadcast across the country
yeah,
and then said they didn't. Like it's not the CIA wasn't hiding the fact that they killed JFK. They wanted everyone to know and then still be able to deny it. It's not me threatening you, but behave, you know? It's like you can't legally say that we did this. You can't prove it. You can't prove we did this. But I want everyone in this country to know that we run shit, not the president.
right,
And I think since then it's kind of like, congratulations, you're the president. Your inauguration's done. Now sit down and let's show you all of the shit. Here's all the shit that everyone, you get debriefed on everything.
yeah.
And then the last thing they show you is what they did to like the last guy who leaked any of this or didn't do what they told him to.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Do you think they sat down Trump and they told him all that?
Yeah. I think I used to be a Trump guy, like 2016.
Yeah.
And I've come to the opinion now that I think he is part of this machine.
Okay.
Um, I I wish I believed in anyone, man. I wonder about RFK too. Like I think
Right.
everyone knows Vivek's a plant. I think everyone knows Ramaswamy's a plant.
Yeah.
And DeSantis is sus too.
He's
Like
wearing
he's
heels.
like
I don't know why, but
DeSantis is and Ramaswamy I think are both suspicious. They're sus. Trump, I don't know that he's not a real person. I want to believe that he is an outsider to the system,
right.
but I'm not so sure.
You don't think he's draining the swamp?
I don't know, man. I think maybe he's just a very like okay. Imagine that he is a character.
Mhm.
Imagine it's a psyop. Trump is a psyop. First of all, that would be the best thing the government's ever pulled off. Like they like holy shit, that was really effective,
Yeah.
and like you hit it really well. Usually they're not so good at hiding shit, but so that one thing makes it kind of suspicious. Maybe that's not what's going on. Maybe he is legit, but like also like if it is a psyop, they did a really fucking good job. I wonder about like RFK too. Like I want to like RFK. I really do. I want to like him. But like he's historically a Democrat and then he
Mhm.
just switched his politics.
Right. Why would you do that?
Why'd you do that? Is it because you really value these things or did you think these people are easier to rally than the DNC like than Democrats are? Did you think I can get well, I mean Trump did the same thing. Like
Yeah.
Trump was historically a Democrat.
Yeah, he switched.
Then he switched. I I don't know, man. I have a hard time buying any of it anymore. I
Yeah.
I like Fight Club solutions. I like Boston Tea Party solutions.
Yeah.
I don't. We used to police our government in this country. That's what America's founded on. Is we're not going to let a monarch tell us how we exist
Exactly. Yeah.
and take
Exactly.
advantage of us. And then it happened here, and then we made examples. There's a Million Man March, like Martin Luther King, civil rights movement changed shit here.
Yeah.
We policed it, and it's like Boston Tea Party. Not, I mean, not that much further back, and it's like we're really overdue for something. You know what else is weird? People were rioting here. People were rioting recently, like a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden we had to stay inside all over the world because this was happening in Hong Kong too. Because
Okay.
people were,
Yeah, like the Hong Kong riots. I remember
yeah,
those were late 2019.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden the whole world has to chill out.
Yeah. It the pandemic was so weird. It's like you get to see societies go at like, but it was like everyone was acting like it was the first go at a pandemic, but there had been the
Mm.
plague, and everybody was confused about masks and all this stuff, and like then it all just kind of I'm just confused about like what the fuck happened. I guess
Mm.
it's the numbers went down and the hospitals weren't overwhelmed, but it's also like it's still out there, and
It
isn't it
exists.
still
It
mutating?
exists and evolves for sure.
So when I was hearing about all the mutations in this, I was like, wouldn't it continue to be a problem until like basically humans adapt to it, like
Yeah,
which would take a generation, or I don't really know.
eventually, yeah.
And then the political. I was in Boston when there was riots, and it was just so weird because I went out after. Well, I was listening to a police scanner on the app on my phone in my apartment in Somerville, and people were doing a legitimate peaceful protest with signs and walking around the Boston Public Garden and the Boston Common because that's where they had been asked to demonstrate their
Yeah.
peaceful protest. And then you hear the police on the police scanner going, I'm on Tremont and I'm on forget the other street, but they're just naming all the streets all the way around the Commons. And then they're like, all right, I'm throwing gas, and we're like, this is kind of weird because there's like nothing, you don't really hear any like commotion or like they're not saying any reason. So they start gassing the Boston Public Garden in the Commons, and then the people all are running out, and they're running out right into like Boylston Street, Newberry Street, and these are all like have the biggest, most expensive retail stores in Boston, and Prudential and Copley Place, which like I'm talking Rolex watches, like a Richard Mille store. This is like a $250,000 a piece watch store with the windows busted out. And the weird thing was just that the cops would gas all the protesters. They would start running out into the streets, right? And like certain people obviously are just there to loot stuff, but then you also have this huge panic that you caused. There was like 500 National Guard that I must have seen with my own eyes, like on bikes, on foot,
Mm.
but they're not doing anything. The weirdest thing was like I'm just standing there and these people are breaking the windows to a shop, and then there's a cop on the other block, kind of just he's just standing there, and they're not arresting anybody.
Mm.
They arrested a few people, but it was so random because then there'd be all these other people doing shit and they wouldn't arrest them. It was very bizarre what was going on.
Yeah.
And also like all these shops have really good riot insurance, and they probably profit from getting looted like that, as far as I understand it. And just to see like the cops standing on the street corners watching everybody loot all the shops but not doing it. You could easily like run up to the shop, like start pointing guns, like get the fuck out of here, stop, protect the shops if that's actually what you're there to do. And then I also had a good friend who I do believe what he says, tell me that he just saw this pallet with a bunch of bricks on it, like in the same area that people were breaking all the windows to the shops. And it's like, the fuck does a pallet of bricks come from? It, looters aren't gonna like bring a pallet of bricks and like put it down.
Mm.
They're gonna bring like a rock in their pocket or like a
Mm.
fucking gun or something. So there's just a lot of weird shit
That's
going
weird.
on. And Boston is corrupt as fuck. Like I used to hang out at Quincy Quarry, notorious burial ground of Whitey Bulger. And so it's
Mm.
like 300-foot hole that's filled in with dirt from the Boston Big Dig, but before it was filled in, it was just a quarry that was like 300 feet deep, got filled up with water. The first body they found in there was this dude who snitched on Whitey. They find his car in the bottom, pull it out, open the trunk. He's shot in the head in the trunk. There's estimated like 24 cars dating from like 1940s or 50s until whenever it was filled in, sitting at the bottom of there.
Mm.
They never took any of them out. They never like drained it or like took out all the bodies that were in there. They filled dirt over them, and it's because the Boston Police Department was complicit with Whitey Bulger's actions, and they
Mm.
worked together because there's a story of this trucker who he knew his daughter was like selling her body on the street for money. She got in some trouble, got killed, dumped in there. He knew she was in there because when Boston police divers went looking for another body, they had, and this would always happen, they would go diving for one body and they would find like two or three different bodies that they weren't even looking for. And they would say, well, we couldn't retrieve them because it's too dangerous. And like, honestly, diving in a quarry that's 300 feet deep, you could totally retrieve those
Mm.
bodies. But so they see his daughter's body in there because they give a description that matches his daughter, and so he knows that she's down there like 30 feet deep just on a ledge. And that he's like, you guys got to get her out and do an investigation. They never do. they fill it in. You can still go there, and sometimes he puts up like a little memorial right above the spot where the ledge is. And it's just wild because everybody's there smoking weed, hanging out. That's like kind of the spot nowadays, and you're like, you just feel this vibe of like there's like probably at least dozens of bodies down there that were like viciously murdered by Whitey Bulger and his associates.
Yeah.
So it's if you ever go to Somerville.
That sounds fucking awesome.
All right, Quincy, I mean, check it out.
Yeah, I grew up that way for sure.
It's weird. It's like just reading. I used to just hang out there and just be like tripping out, just kind of thinking about everything that happened there and like all the different stories that you can read. A lot of stuff. And the fact that they just fill it in and they don't, I mean, it's obviously they don't want to open that can of worms because they're complicit. The police department is complicit with a lot of those investigations into those murders.
Yeah. I can't think of a single thing that I'm aware of that the cops have ever done good. They show up late and write some shit down on paper. They don't prevent anything.
Yeah.
Investigation's good, right? Like getting to the bottom of it, but like detectives, not like street cops.
Yeah. The only street cops that have done good things like are the types of people who become cops for the right reasons, and that's a much more rare thing than your average cop. Because the thing about that whole system is like, okay, so you have somebody who has a gun and like it's basically up to him at a traffic stop if I'm a threat or not, and if I'm gonna hurt him or not. So what is his qualifications as somebody who has that power?
Getting paid like minimum wage.
Getting paid like minimum wage, not having to do as much school as I have done just to be a fucking guitar player, which doesn't matter as much because I'm never going to be able to kill anybody. Or if I was a hairstylist, I would have had more time in training,
than a police
officer. And also, I just think
it's gotta be a hard job too.
And like you're higher IQ kind of achieving people in law enforcement are never your patrolling street cops because I know somebody whose family had a kind of high achieving person who became a cop and they worked their way up and then they worked in the FBI. So what does that tell you about your 10-year street traffic cop, who's had to switch stations because he had a complaint against him at the other one? It tells you he's fucked and he should get counseling and he should have his rights as a police officer taken away from him. And there's so many fucking police officers in America, and there's so much like police power, and also such a misunderstanding of like what the fuck it is. Like you have Democrats saying defund the police. The police were traditionally funded by Democrats, not to get into this crazy game that we're trying to avoid, but it's just like there's the cognitive dissonance where you go, like, is anybody thinking about this? Like, it's not like even if it is a racial thing, but it's just even beyond that about like, is this the way that America was intended to work? No, it's not. You know what I mean? And do other countries' police hide from them? You know what I mean? As much as American police do, just to get you for a traffic stop. Is there a culture of entrapment with other?
We used to just not even have police here.
Yeah.
Like people would like if you see something bad happen, you take care of it. Like I'm sure that was corrupt as fuck too. People are doing horrible things, but I think like the original police force that was invented came out of like slave hunters, like people who caught runaway slaves, and it's like those were the first people, and like that's obviously going to be targeted at a specific group of people.
Yeah, and as far as I understand it, it's because you had this like kind of loophole where you could still have slaves where it's like, all right, well, we're gonna free black people, but if they get caught doing a crime, they can either go to jail or they can do forced labor until they paid their time or their whatever for their crime, and then they're free again. But really that just means you can profile a bunch of black people, arrest them for sometimes doing a crime and a lot of times not doing a crime at all, probably the majority of the time. And then you have a free slave labor force. That's how I've heard. That's
Damn.
how a lot of the railroads were made.
Holy shit, I didn't think about
Past
that.
because at that point slaves have been emancipated
So
in
they just
general.
found a new way of keeping people enslaved. That's crazy.
Yeah, like a loophole, and then I forget when that was kind of changed as far as you make labor a payment for a crime.
Mm.
But until that point, I mean, that's just a fucking easy loophole there.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, the thing is too, like at any point we decided to, we could do something about all this.
Yeah,
But we're just not right now.
people want to survive, and like we've been programmed that to survive, we have to conform to society as the best we can.
And the thing is, like, we don't even have, like, we can't overthrow the government because we're part of the UN. So, like, even if you can't get American soldiers to shoot American people, you can have someone from a country that doesn't speak English come in, and the same way we do, where with like other countries is like, oh, there's an insurrection here. We have to go help these people. And it's really, you're just killing dissidents of the system.
Yeah.
And so, like, even if we can't overthrow it, though, like, we don't have to. Like, pretty much everyone I know has decided I disagree with drug laws. I'm just not going to obey them. Like, like,
yeah,
I
there's a
don't give
lot
a
of
fuck.
categories like that where it's like that law's not really
Yeah.
legit. Like we don't have to follow that one.
Yeah. So we could do this with anything we wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, like America does better than other countries at this, where it's like, I just fuck that. We always all agree that that's stupid. We're just not going to do that, regardless of whether you make it a law or not.
Yeah.
But like, we could do this with like taxes. We could just all stop paying taxes. Like, fuck you, put my money where you say it's going. Like, do take care of us with with our own fucking money. And like, until you do that, we're just not going to obey your laws. Like, there are places all over the country that police will not go to.
Mm-hmm.
We can make the whole country like that.
Yeah, and you know why they want us divided, in my opinion, is because then that won't happen. Like only a united fucking country can do something. A united people can do something like that.
Yeah.
And we had speakeasy so that we could be united. It's like a secret kind of meeting kind of thing in real life. And now it's just so obvious why they would not want us to be united because we all could do that, like stop fucking paying taxes. It's like the Tea Party dumping the tea in the fucking water. It's just there's no way that could happen in this current climate because you would have people fuck those people. They're not paying those taxes. They're lazy. Everybody's virtue signaling and riding on their ego.
They've all been brainwashed.
Yeah, and they feel so good talking down about fellow citizens for various reasons instead of trying to empathize with the fellow citizens. It's like if I see someone homeless on the street and another dude in my car is like just talking shit or something, it's just like wild to me because I'm like, that could be you like in a month, man, if just the right shitty things happen to you.
It's just a roll of the dice.
Yeah, like we all have the same brain chemistry. We're all in one way or another trying to fight just chasing dopamine and serotonin hits, whether that's checking Facebook or whether that's smoking crack at fucking hookers. You know what I mean? It's all the same type of motivation behind it and need that's being fulfilled. That's why judgment is just bizarre if you really think about it a lot, because it's like why it's like almost like just the wrong decision. You can go one way or another.
I think we're all the same person.
Yeah, I think there's a collective consciousness, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel that as an artist a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I can have an amazing experience playing music that I could never have by myself.
Yeah. Not only like does that just kind of make sense, but like every religion says this, but the religions forgot that it said this. Like the name for Yahweh or God in the Hebrew is YHVH, which is the letters when you put them together like that, it's earth, water, air, fire. It's just the building blocks of reality. And then anytime he's like shown as a person, like Job is one of the only ones I can think of where God's a character. But it's just a way of explaining it to people.
Yeah.
Like like ancient Israelites didn't, their explanation for God was it's Yah, which is in and exhale away. So it's like it's life, it's everything around us.
Yeah.
And then Jesus is like Catholics and I think Trinitarians and some people they'll have the mystery of the Trinity. It's like God is Father, He's Son, He's Holy Spirit. But it's the mystery. It's the mystery of the Trinity. We can't. It doesn't make sense. We can't explain it.
Yeah.
Except like it's really simple. Like it's just one thing experiencing itself. Like I'm God, you're God. The only thing that makes us different is like our life experiences and our biology. But like everyone, it's the same thing. Ouroboros is just eating itself.
Yeah.
And like everything existence is this separation, like the separation and like coming together. Like that's how babies are made.
Yeah.
Like you're separate and then you come together. Consciousness is like we were all God and then we separated
Yeah.
and then we'll all come back together again.
Yeah, it's like the Big Bang.
Yeah. It's like yeah, yes, the Big Bang. Yes. It starts at a point, it expands out, and then it's gonna contract, and it's gonna do that. Again. And that's what everything is a separation and a together and a separation.
I do think we're on like a extremely long cycle and we're all trying to make sense of like where we came from, where we're going. And I think like living and dying is something within a much bigger cycle. Like I personally am pretty interested in reincarnation, and I find it pretty compelling.
You need another beer? Oh, you still got that one?
Got that one, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I find it pretty compelling because it's just like sometimes I have these weird deja vu feelings, like not even like I dreamt that was going to happen, but like I have been in the same spot or in a similar situation, like in a totally different life. And I remember when I was young, I would tell my parents, I can remember before I was born, being conscious in this huge void, and I still can kind of remember that feeling of just like becoming conscious. And then when I was a kid, I was just always really curious and like almost confused about the idea that, okay, well, if I could have been born, I'm a soul in this body, and I could have been born into any family or any body or any place in time, that it's interesting that I was born in like 1999 in Massachusetts, and you know that I was born into this particular family. I mean, I love my family. I'm super happy. I do think it was the exact thing that was supposed to happen, but it was always like I was just aware that like I could have ended up anywhere, and I ended up there, and that it was interesting, and that I could have ended up at any point in time. I was always just had this inherent feeling that this was true. Like I could have just become conscious in the medieval time, and I could have been a settler's kid. But so sometimes I was like fucking stoked, and I still am like, oh shit, what an interesting time to be alive. Like there's all this technology. I can zoom around I still think in this weird way, like I can get in my car and zoom around, whereas back in the day we had to ride a horse and buggy. I don't know if that's just like the way I think, but sometimes I think it's just like maybe I fucking have lived couple different lives and now and so that's why sometimes I'm just like I do feel like this man in the new age where some people are just like, no, I'm just born and everything sucks, and I'm like, I don't know, man, there's definitely something.
I think I've been here a few times too.
And also like musical experiences, sometimes you're like, or just whatever somebody is really into, you're like, they must have done that before, or they must have always, like maybe I was
they just pick it up immediately, like they already have the muscle memory or something.
Yeah, like child prodigies. You're like, how can this like 8-year-old kid play this like Beethoven song? It's like, maybe that's fucking Beethoven. You know what I mean? That would explain it.
Beethoven the fourth.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, just trying to get my chops back. Get back where I was.
But I practiced for a little while.
Yeah, like my hands are like tiny now. Like I can finally play this song. Like not a baby anymore.
Yeah.
And like I was telling somebody like yesterday, if you could live life backwards, it's like you could be happy, because the thing about life that's weird is like you'll be happy, but you'll feel kind of unhappy, something's not right, and then you'll look back on it and you'll be like, man, that was it, that was the time. And so then if you could go backwards into that time, then you would just like your childhood or certain moments of being young where you don't have to pay rent. You don't have to. There's just certain things that aren't on your roster yet, and it's just like you never actually realize when things are that good until it's over. Like
Yeah.
there's something wrong with humans where we're always looking for an issue. Like in the greatest moment, you're thinking, all right, well, what's about to go wrong or what is wrong?
Yeah.
And then later you're like, that, you know what? You can finally like admit to yourself that was great.
I'm so I stay plugged into the news a lot. Like I keep keep up with what's going on the best I can. Like
Yeah.
not any mainstream news sources, but like third party shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And like too much. I do it too much. Because like you're so right. Like we live in a great time. This is the best quality of life ever,
Yeah.
and as far as we know, human history. So there's so much to be grateful for.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm definitely the kind of I don't know. I don't want to be comfortable with it, like because things we still have a lot of problems.
Well, yeah,
We still have a lot to. It could be way better than it is still.
it's so weird because now our problems are all completely self-made by our species. And like the problems are all because of disturbances between like our species. Whereas before it was like, is this giant bear or this woolly mammoth gonna work my ass? And like, my kids will find my like rotten
Yeah,
corpse tomorrow, and they'll starve to death, and my wife will die. You know what I mean? That was like it before. Now it's like McDonald's is a monopoly and
yeah,
Monsanto's is. It's like the problems are almost worse. Like so, I
mm,
get like why you're saying like you sometimes you kind of just like forget that it's a good time because
yeah,
the problems are like less conquerable than like
mm,
I just need to survive. Now it's like, well, fuck, this is so over my head and out of my control, and that's why the only way that it could ever be in our control is if we were actually united as a
yeah.
people, as a consciousness, and we actually embrace love, um, and real, you know what I mean? But not to be corny, but like
No, it's true.
that is
It's
the
true.
answer, and that's something that doesn't sell like hate and negativity does.
Yeah,
That shit sells like hotcakes.
it does. It
People would
does.
eat that up.
Yeah, I mean, even though I hate it, like I keep watching it. I keep,
Yeah, me too. I mean,
yeah,
I'd eat that up, but it's just what's wrong with one of the common denominators that's like wrong with people is like negativity is piques their interest more than positive
mm.
things.
I'm a very radical person. I've, there have been points in my life where I'm like, have seriously considered doing something that would get me killed or like put in jail.
Yeah,
And I'm honestly like, I'm still that person. I'm still there, but
yeah,
I have realized logically that all it would do is to like throw away my life. Like I wouldn't actually accomplish anything.
right.
So what I figured out is like all I can really do on my own is talk about it.
Yeah,
So like I started doing this and just talking to people, and like what I'm figuring out is like we all kind of understand what the problems are. Even like I talk to people on all sides of stuff,
mm.
and like we all there's a lot we agree about.
There's more everybody agrees about for sure that we disagree about,
Yeah,
and everybody thinks it's the opposite way until you sit down with the motherfucker and
yeah.
actually talk to them.
If you're coming at it like disingenuously, like you want to fight, you will find areas of
Yeah,
disagreement. That's why I think like debate is a problem. Debate as an idea is a problem because like when I have a conversation with someone, I'm not trying to get them on my side, which
mm.
is where like doctrine and radical politics get into play.
Right.
But like I'm not it's not competitive. It's not like I'm winning this.
Yeah,
Like I'm going to win this and they're going to be like they've lost.
it's
It's
an
like
exchange
you're
of ideas.
collaborating with
Yeah,
someone, not assuming that you have the right idea,
yeah,
assuming that you can learn something also, and then you'll come to an agreement in the middle and you both win.
yeah, totally.
And like that is so lacking today. Like these kind of conversations, like stoner shit, like it's good. It's there's a lot of it in some circles, but people at large are not doing this.
No, and I mean, you get this like fantasization of this Ben Shapiro type debate where it's like
Okay, Fabs.
he owned that lib, you know what I mean? And it's like, man, if I ever feel like I owned anybody, honestly, I might feel good for a second because whatever fucked up part of me gets off on it.
Yeah.
But then I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna sit down, and I'm gonna be, man, that was a piece of shit. You know, eventually it's gonna come back to me, and I'm gonna feel like shit about it. And it's like, then what did we get out of that? Nothing. I just was a dickhead to that guy, and I like basically told him that I'm closed-minded, and
Yeah.
and what really should happen, what like a true exchange of ideas would be, is like we both are going to try to understand each other, understand where we disagree, which is not a problem. Because why is it a problem to disagree?
If we're adults, we should be able to like some really like I'm sure there's if we look for it, there are things we strongly disagree
Yeah,
about.
but
And
we're
if,
not looking for that because that
Yeah.
would be insane.
and even if we found it and we talked it out and we still don't agree,
Yeah.
even strongly, like we're both adults, we should be able to be
it would be
friends.
totally fine. And
Yeah.
and that's just something that I know about you. Then it's like if we're that harsh and judgmental, like about people, then it's like you're fucked. You're never
Yeah.
gonna be happy or make anybody else like
Mhm.
happy, and that's kind of like a really important thing, I would think. You know, it should be.
We like demonize people for having different beliefs,
Yeah.
and that's like it's like you were saying earlier, like when you start like casting like blame or judgment on someone, like that's where I was going with like I think we're all the same person. So
Yeah.
like I did that.
Yeah.
I'm mad at myself. If you hate someone, you hate yourself. That's
Totally.
what it is actually.
And I mean, psychological projection is like one of the most common psychological traits. So it's just me going like, hey man, you should probably like show up on time next time because like I'm always late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's so many times that happens to me where a motherfucker will say something to me and I'm like, that's exactly like your issue. Like, and then I realize, oh, they're just like straight up subconsciously just putting it on me because they are deeply ashamed of that
Yeah.
thing about themselves.
Yeah. It's this is I'm a humanist. Like I think people are good.
Mm-hmm.
We're inherently good, and people do bad things out of situation or desperation, and
Yeah, hurt people do bad
hurt
things.
people
Yeah.
hurt people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's yeah, and it's sad. It makes me really sad. Um, like I tend to focus on the negative. Like I have a hard time relaxing. I
Me
have a hard
too.
time having a good time.
Yeah.
And there's like this energy in our society that's like not healthy for people.
No.
I wish I need to practice like unplugging more often, like just separation from everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, but like there's also the other side of that too, where it's like I understand I used to be in a cult, so I understand why people do these things. Like with the example of religion, these are hard things to think about, to like
Yeah.
not know where we come from, to not know where we're going. Like why are we here at all?
Yeah,
Like,
those
those
are
are
the hard
big
questions.
questions.
Yeah.
So to just let go of that and say, well, I'll just believe this. I don't have to think about it anymore because now I can do other shit. Like this huge weight off my back, just
True, yeah.
having this.
Picking something, yeah.
Yeah.
Just go with that.
Same thing with politics. It's like instead of me thinking about all these issues, I'm so busy, I'm so tired. I'm part of this group now.
Easy, yeah.
And it's like I can think about other shit. I don't have to think about this anymore. And we do that a lot. Do that a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's why it's so easy. Also, the more you put people in under kind of economical stress, and as we all know, like it's harder to make a career where you can buy a house than it was for people a generation ago or two generations ago. This makes it's. Oh, we also know that poverty leads to crime because when you're impoverished, you have to do
what else are you supposed to do?
It's like Mos Def said, when the minimum wage is $5.15, you best believe you're gonna have to find a new grind to get some cream. It's like he said it right there. Don't even focus on the poverty or the crimes or teaching kids how to behave. Kids are not going to behave if they can't fucking eat. And if their mom is dying of starvation, I'm not going to fucking behave. If my loved ones are in a situation and I can commit a crime to rectify their situation, fuck the law. And that should be how people think.
Absolutely.
And that's always going to be how people think. So you're not going to change human nature and you shouldn't even try. Instead, just don't let people get in that situation. If other European countries like can do that shit, so can we. but
Yeah.
I don't think there's actually much of an interest in that because there's a huge money machine behind a lot of these kind of institutions that are involved with dealing with these impoverished people or dealing with crime and law enforcement.
Make some money.
Yeah,
Welfare makes money.
yeah,
Yeah, and I cannot be mad at anyone for taking advantage of a system. It's like I'm gonna get as much money of my money. That's my fucking money. That people always talk about like you'll be given this money if you do this program.
yeah.
It's like no. Part of what's been stolen from you will come back to you. You get a small percentage of that.
Yeah.
So like a welfare system is like it's free money. No, it's not. It's our money.
Yeah.
Like as a country, like we're paying ourselves. We're not being given this gift.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, it'd be different if we actually benefited from it, but I don't think that our systems have our wellness in mind at all.
No, I think the bottom line is very obviously like financially based, and there's this huge global economical like power struggle, and it's like the humanity is so lost in it that it's insane. I mean, we still live in in like the most humanitarian or one of the most humanitarianly friendly places, and I just know people who have just been like, I've heard stories where it's like Jesus Christ, it's like the cops pulled a friend of mine over, and he's telling me he's a 60-year-old man, and he's telling me this story from when he was about my age, and he's like, they're like, all right, man, either you run across this field and like if you and we're gonna like sick the dogs on you, and if you can like outrun them for like 100 yards, we'll let you go. Otherwise, they're gonna like chew you up. And like he didn't even do shit. He just has like a missing tag. So instead of just he's there like, well, you can get out of the ticket this way. And he knows that the ticket's gonna fuck his life up. And then you're like, this is the land of the free, home of the brave. And I mean, I really want it to be, and I think a lot of people are true patriots, and I think there's a lot of great Americans. But let's be real. In that case, it's just like that's kind of fucked up if that's like the leading, most progressive, America superpower of the world, like it's supposed to be. And then you have like way worse shit going on in certain other countries that we're not actually interested in rectifying at all.
Not unless there's money involved.
No, and I mean there's just it's obvious that huge humanitarian like genocides and horrible things can happen, and that the U.S. will pick the side that, or they'll pick the right angle for them to get paid or keep their global ally and everything in interest. And then everybody will jump on a bandwagon. And it's like, how can you really, like, you can understand who is causing the issue, but how can you, like, ever take one side of people dying over another side of people dying without acknowledging that it's a goddamn shame that anybody's dying at all?
It's crazy.
Like,
Yeah,
that is what's a shame. That's what we should all
yeah,
be most upset about, is that somebody still thinks war is the answer.
yeah. I completely agree with you. And like I got friends that feel real strongly about like both sides of it, but like you made a good point about like what America does is not only bad for us, it's bad for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Like these conflicts that are happening in the Middle East or Europe, they're happening because of America.
Yeah.
America has made like Ukraine, it's like before Putin invaded Ukraine, there was deals of peace. He's like, hey, just don't join NATO.
Exactly. Just don't do this, that, the other. There were so many different stipulations that the
Yeah.
U.S. repeatedly over the years have violated this request, violated that request at the stake of American people.
Mhm.
No, I mean, unfortunately, if people are going to eventually go and assist, but at the stake of Ukrainians. So, like,
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think the U.S. gives a fuck.
The US doesn't give a fuck.
No.
US has never given a fuck. Like we've had bad optics with Vietnam. Of like, okay, we can't just go kill people for no reason because it looks bad. It looks bad on
Oh,
us.
turns out that looks bad. Yeah, big
Yeah.
surprise,
Oh,
America. Who would've thought?
But like if we run a plane into two buildings, we have a really good reason to go kill this cartoon villain like kill the infidels, like comic book level supervillain, right? That
Yeah.
we've created.
I
And
mean,
it's like these people exist, but the CIA props them up. Like that way we have a good excuse to go invade. And it's like this like Israel has like the strongest defense budget and like backed by America.
hmm
But like these people are just able to get in. Like these malnourished, impoverished people
yeah,
are able to get in and do a bunch of awful shit. And then, oh yeah, also they have, when Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, he left these weapons that are being used against Israel. So we're
yeah.
literally funding both sides of this conflict.
Dude, that's what's wild about America right there. It's like we go in Afghanistan and we're like, okay, we're gonna help this government fight against this tyrannical force. We make them like dependent on us. They're used to our help and our equipment and our funding, and then we just leave because it's not. I don't think it's gonna. We're not actually gonna win. We're wasting too much money and people on this. Let's say we won. Let's just say we won. Let's make a video. So they make a video.
Fuck out.
We're out of here. We won. This is our victory lap. We're leaving all the shit.
Let's leave all the shit
let's
for the
leave all the
terrorists.
Black Hawks and whatever. Like they don't know how to use it. Whatever. I don't know what the fuck they were actually thinking, but
They were thinking they'll use this to cause a problem that we can go intervene on. Like they'll take these and they'll attack Israel with it. Let's hope they do. Let's hope they do this. That way we have
shit like that is just like so crazy that you don't want to believe it, but it just like it's like why okay we're not idiots, so we're not just leaving Black Hawks by accident. Like that's so hard for me to that's harder for me to believe than that we left it there on purpose so that they could fuck something up so that we can go and
exactly
because
that's a lot of money. We're not that incompetent.
Yeah, exactly.
That America's that evil, not that incompetent.
Yeah, and they're not going to leave like money there, like you're saying. It's just wild.
I think sometimes I'm like, you know what? Maybe things aren't as crazy as I think they are. Then something will happen, and I'm like, oh wait, this goes deeper than I could ever imagine. This goes so much deeper than anyone has ever thought of. Like it goes deeper than you could ever conceive of. And I think it goes all the way up to like there is a force interfering with humanity. Like I don't necessarily think we're doing this to ourselves. Occam's razor says, yeah, we are. This is just greed. This is just what happens.
Of humans, yeah.
But I think there is something else intervening in humanity.
Like a spiritual force.
A spiritual one or an alien one.
Oh, okay.
Either way.
If it was an alien one, what do you think like their vested interest would be? Would they try to destroy society?
I love that you brought up other flood stories because that brings up like the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Anunnaki. You familiar with Anunnaki stuff?
No.
Okay. The oldest document ever found is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a Sumerian or Mesopotamian document, and it's the story of the flood, but it's also a story of origin. Like the oldest thing we've ever found.
Wow.
Is a story of how we got here, and it's about these aliens, which are basically gods. Like it comes down, whether you want to call it a god or an alien is kind of up to you.
Okay, yeah.
But they come down. It's not really clear, like from space or from a higher realm or what. But there are valuable minerals on Earth, like gold.
Yeah.
So it's like they splice enough of their DNA into these apes that they're able to mine gold. And there's one called Enki, who is like the betrayer. He betrayed his own kind, puts even more of his DNA into these monkeys and makes them sapient.
Oh.
So at this point, we're like, hey, we're way too conscious to be just
doing gold like this. Yeah.
And so the story kind of tapers off there. It's not clear what happens from there, but like I think we either like ran them off or killed them. Because we also like we outnumbered them significantly according to the story.
Okay.
So if all of a sudden they're awake, it's like they're not taking your shit anymore.
Yeah.
This is the story of humanity, is us overthrowing systems. But this basically, I think nowadays it's like, okay, how do you get people to amass a bunch of minerals?
Hmm.
You make it their commerce. You make it their, like, it's their goal of the whole system is to collect as much of this mineral and hoard it places.
Yeah.
So you have these convenient little places you can just, they'll do all the work still. Except now you can just go pick it up from them.
So you think we're like minion workers, like for aliens, and we're
Yeah.
all tricked thinking that there's all this meaning in life, but really they're just
Yeah.
like trying to like get us to get these minerals.
We thought that we had a bunch of gold in one of these forts. I can't remember which one, but that's supposedly where America's gold was kept. And then like it got leaked that there's no gold there. Like the massive gold they said there was is not there. So where's all our gold?
Was it ever there, or is it just?
Yeah, maybe it was never there. Maybe, yeah. Like, where's all the gold at? Where is Earth's gold?
And so what do they use the gold for? Is this like a food, like
In
a vital thing for them in some way?
in the Mesopotamian stuff, the lore is that it's good for their atmosphere back home.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work.
I don't
but how
either.
would we ever know? You know, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
and I mean, maybe I don't really have an answer on whether that's what's actually going on or not.
Right.
But it is interesting that like the oldest cultures we have explanations of shit. Like there's that, and then like the Torah too. Like I think is incredibly profound, and beautiful. It's just not a history book.
Mm,
It didn't happen that way. But
right.
what it's trying to tell you is like extreme. I think it's extremely valuable. It's timeless, and it's not even about what you're reading. It's about becoming possessed by this. That it's your interaction with the spirit. Um, and like these, this is not the only. Like I was saying, like Alice in Wonderland does the same thing. There's a reason. Like when you read Alice in Wonderland, it's not like it's a children's book, but it's weird,
Mm,
and you don't quite understand what you're reading.
yeah.
Kind of like scripture, where it's
Definitely.
like, and there were 75 iron ingots, and there were 85
Yeah.
like lapis lazuli.
You're like, that's random.
Yeah, what am I actually? But like in Hebrew, letters are they're the same numbers. Like so, like this letter is also this number. So when you're reading it, you're reading number patterns at the same time that you're reading the story.
Oh, okay.
So like we could do this with English. You could make it A1, B2, C3, but you have to sit there and translate it. For them, it would be like they're reading these things, two different things at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot of that in Hebrew text of like hidden number patterns. It's all like hidden information. Um, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That alien idea is interesting because, as far as I understand, there's like a huge part of human evolution where a lot of people are basically like humans evolved really fast from monkeys into conscious human, hairless, on their bodies, hairless, walking on two legs, like all
Yeah.
the differences. The timeline is weird to a lot of people, and so you've got the stoned ape theory, which, as far as I understand it, is like the small amount of psychedelics in the diet led to a higher neuroplasticity, which leads to a faster evolution. That's one idea. I honestly don't know many other theories, but this kind of like alien inbreeding, the crossbreeding between aliens and monkeys is definitely another approach that I've heard, or is a plausible theory
Yeah.
as to how we would have accelerated our evolution. But then the question for me would be, why did the aliens? Well, I guess in your theory, they haven't abandoned us; they're still using us. And I guess that would make most sense that they would not want us to know about them. But
And that story of the his name's, which it has like a funny. I always thought it was funny that like his name is Inki, Enki, but like it makes me think of like in key, like,
oh yeah,
which is just like that's just silly, but like that's the same character as the snake in the garden.
oh,
Like
okay.
have this like this is a common story with stuff where it's like forbidden knowledge. Like you've been given this thing that makes you know the difference between good and evil. And like Prometheus in Greek lore, he you know about Prometheus?
Vaguely, but
So he Prometheus was a titan. He wasn't a god. Which like the Titans created the gods in Greek mythology. They were like the real gods basically. And Zeus was a god that Prometheus helped him overthrow the Titans.
Oh, okay.
So he's like an usurper. And like, so together the gods and Prometheus, this Titan, overthrow the Titans. But then Prometheus like gives a torch to man, which was strictly against Zeus's rules, like teaching them how to make fire.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, wait a minute, I see what you're doing. You're doing the same thing to me that you just helped me do to the Titans. Like that's what you do. You're a usurper. And that's the same character as the snake in the garden,
Right.
or Enki. I kind of, I think so. I want to just real quickly. I want to touch on also we were talking earlier in this conversation about how people are very tribal. We
Yeah.
lock up into groups. I think the reason we can't evolve past this is it is part of our nature to serve something, to serve a greater good.
Right.
Have this, we create gods for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I think this is unavoidable. So the one I've cast my lot in with is knowledge, the pursuit of knowledge, the accessibility of knowledge for everyone. I hate gatekeeping. I hate the occult stuff where it's like we know something
And we're
that,
gonna keep it to ourselves. Yeah.
like the things we're talking about right now about the Bible being alive and how it's just an explanation of how there's one thing experiencing itself from all these different angles. This is all Kabbalah stuff, like
really?
like Jewish mysticism. But this is help. You can't be a Kabbalist unless you're 40 years old, a man, and you have to be invited in.
Right.
You have to be, so like there's this gatekeeping where like even not a lot of like Jewish people understand the Bible the way like it's in tiers, the same way it is with Christianity, where it's like they have this very surface level interpretation of it, and then you have to be like in the fucking Vatican to like get the secret shit.
Right.
I hate this stuff. I hate gate knowledge is for everyone. Knowledge wants to be free.
Yeah.
And to hoard it over anybody else, I think is a great evil.
Yeah, it is. It's like a wrongdoing to people on like a spiritual level, or it definitely, or just on a objective level where it's gonna affect their lives by not knowing. It's like people who shelter their children too much, you know, it's like a microcosm of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a moment to like, cause you were homeschooled too, so I'm sure you can relate to this, but it took me like a moment to like learn how to socialize and like be a human being.
Yeah,
right?
I'm still working on it.
Yeah, same. But like also there's certain things that we get out of that most people don't. Like not only do you, like on one hand you don't get socialized, on the other hand you don't get institutionalized.
Exactly, which is priceless.
Yeah, which is priceless. For that. Me too. It's like we're thinking outside the box just from the get-go.
Yeah, and it's so easy to see like a difference in almost consciousness, or like at least train of thought and consciousness between you and like a peer your age who is maybe still practicing in the church and is still hanging out with the same public school friends that they came up with, and they maybe a lot of times they haven't traveled outside of the country or into many different states or met a very diverse amount of people. All of these things will like change everybody in the same exact way, where they just become more open and less closed off. And so you meet somebody who's so sure of something, and you're like, I don't even think you're so sure of that. That's just all you fucking know, and that's cool. But it just makes me grateful to have had all that time and all those diverse influences around me. And basically, it kind of freaked me out back then. Felt like I didn't know what was going on or what was normal. But that is how you should feel, instead of just picking one thing and deciding that is normal and that is what I want to be. Instead, you get to actually decide, and that's a hard decision, but you have that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's something I say a lot on the show is I'm dogmatic about anti-dogmatism. So like everything is on the table for discussion. Regardless of how anyone feels about it. And like no assumptions, like, and be willing to have your mind changed.
Yeah.
Like be willing, because you're only doing yourself a disservice if someone presents truth to you and you reject it.
Yeah. You've taken a huge loss then.
Yeah. So I've kind of like, that's my, whenever I say I worship Prometheus or I worship Lucifer, is that's what I mean. is that I worship this exchange of knowledge, even forbidden knowledge. Like I'm an absolutist on this. Like if people are going to kill themselves with this knowledge, that's their decision.
Yeah.
Like even God can't withhold knowledge from us. I
Knowledge.
don't agree with that.
Yeah.
If we're all going to get ourselves killed with it, that's our choice to make.
But you deserve that choice.
Yeah. Yeah, which is that's Satan. That's in the garden. He's like, here you go. Now like, and they instantly like they're like, whoa, I'm naked. And it's
Yeah.
like I'm not saying that literally happened, but it's literally what's happening to us right now. Like, and this whole thing is like it's a metaphor for reality. It mirrors reality.
Yeah. In the sense that we are indoctrinated, and the truth is like the evil that well, it's not an evil, it's like, but it presents
Yeah.
itself that way. Is that, how would you explain like the manifestation to me in like in society now of like the, because I really like taking the Eve and Adam story and like putting that in like current context. Where would you say like everything's at metaphorically?
We're in like Revelations, like
Yeah.
we're in end times shit. Well, now I'm like I used to. It's so crazy because like I didn't understand the Bible when I was a Christian.
Yeah, I definitely didn't. I
It's like
definitely don't fully understand it now at all.
it's like only taking a step back and looking at it from another angle am I like, oh, I get it now. But like we are in end times, but it's not. This is something I talk to my mom about a lot. Like my mom's so cool because she is like devoutly religious and she's doing it for the right reasons. But like I can still talk to her about crazy shit. Like I've talked to her about DMT. I've talked to her about interacting with demons and spirits and shit, and she doesn't like it. It's not
Yeah.
comfortable for her to hear that, but she'll still talk to me.
She'll accept it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we can have a conversation about it, which I love that I could have that. But something I argue with her about all the time is I'm like, yes, mom, God has a plan. Everything's going exactly the way it's supposed to, but we're part of that. What you do is part of this plan. So it's like the second coming of Jesus is not some guy who's going to come down and wipe out all the evil. It's an energy within us. It's what you said earlier about like the only answer is love.
Yeah.
It's this spirit of self-sacrifice and love for the people around you,
Right.
and understanding that not casting judgment. Like that's me in a different life, and I need to treat them. I need to treat other people the way I want to be treated because it is me.
Exactly. You can do it for the most narcissistic, selfish reason.
Yeah.
If you believe that you're the only soul that matters in the universe, you should still be able to trick yourself into acting in that way out of that idea that you've maybe like the theory that you've lived every single life, and everybody's lived every single life, and that's
the egg.
That's the egg, yeah, and that's reincarnation, or that in that train of thought.
Yeah.
And so, like, if I was to be mean to you right now, then eventually I would be sitting in your body, and I would experience this hurt that you would experience, but I would suffer from it, and I perpetrated it. So then it's like all the suffering and sadness in the world is like could be chalked up to that, just mistreating your people because you don't value them as much as you value yourself, which was where you were completely misguided and wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think anybody who thinks that way is misguided and wrong, and it's pretty obvious to see that if you are fortunate enough to meet people who can show you, that that's not the way to be.
How old were you when you started to realize that there were like when you started to have questions about what you were like being taught and um the universe?
Definitely when I was 8 years old, and it just got stronger from then, because that's kind of when I guess maybe I became lucid or something. I mean, I was lucid, you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you're saying.
Started having my own unique
Become,
train
like,
of thought.
Aware.
Yeah. And you really start questioning. My father was always like, and my mother were always like, question what people tell you, and don't just agree with anything right away before you think about it yourself. So they were teaching me critical thinking.
Yeah.
And they were heavy on that, and we would have exercises in that where it's like a moral or ethical kind of exercise, hypothetically, where it's like, if this were to happen, this kind of situation, who here acted right, or we would watch a movie and it would be like, well, what's the moral of the story and what should you take
Yeah.
out of this? This would be almost anytime we read a book or we watched a movie, it would be a discussion of what can you learn from this? What's the moral of the point? And I think that's like getting kind of lost these days. And it's kind of
Yeah.
weird to me that a lot of public schools don't just have a specific critical thinking course. I think it is hugely beneficial to any type of power that be that people don't think critically on a
Oh
mass
yeah.
scale.
Yeah.
I think that's an obvious reason.
The problems we have are intentional, and it gets dark. It's really dark.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be like that. You
Yeah.
want it to be just, this is human error.
Yeah. Like it's not that bad. It's just,
It's like there is some malevolent force, whether it's people or something external, that does not have people at its best intentions, and it's
yeah.
in charge of shit. Like it runs shit.
Yeah.
And like again, like we could do something about this. Like and not only that, but we will. Like people will come to a point where that happens.
Yeah. I mean, this will manifest in like global world war, or it'll stop before then. But if it comes to that, then or it comes to nuclear war, and then you have a huge population decrease and like almost humanity is called out. That, like, what are you gonna do then? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And there's already historical kind of things hinting at that there might have been a destruction of a higher form of technology or
Yeah,
intelligence in the past, because there's these beautiful things that we built, and how the fuck did we build them? We
yeah,
don't know. So there's obviously a missing link, and the only links that would make sense is some type of technological based thing, and also the knowledge of these kind of ancient Mayan civilizations is very advanced, and the astrology is such a thing that people don't give a fuck about on a mass scale now, but was seemingly practiced by all ancient people,
yeah.
because that
It's
is
been
a really
trivialized.
interesting thing that's up
Yeah,
there. But nowadays we live indoors and we're domesticated as a species compared to then, really. And stargazing is just not. But anytime I sit outside and I look at the stars, I have this massively rewarding experience, and I feel like I've gotten almost in touch with where I'm going and where I'm coming
mhm,
from, just in my day to day life of like what I'm supposed to do next. It's
yeah,
very grounding, and I think that that's a really understated experience. Just looking at like a real no light pollution or minimal light pollution night sky, it's
yeah.
like that is a spiritual experience.
It's just, you get a scale of it. It's like holy shit. Like
Yeah.
it's an important experience to have. That gets me like so we're both determinists mostly, it looks like. Which I've realized recently is not in conflict with free will.
Mhm.
They run alongside each other. It's like you do have free will, but you were always going to do what you did.
Yeah.
And that's not actually, it's saying it's free will is kind of semantics, because yes, you made that decision, but you did it based on all prior
Yeah.
stuff. So like, okay, so if we're on the same page there, like what you said about astrology gets interesting about like astronomy and the esoteric occult stuff
Mm.
with stars, because it's like, okay, if your environment has an effect on your surroundings, the alignment of celestial bodies would have an effect. And really, all at that point, all we're talking about is how much.
Yeah.
We're just talking about. So it's like, but we can, like, even scientists will agree, well, it's got to have some effect,
Oh yeah.
right?
I think it definitely does. On a full moon, I feel different.
Yeah,
Like that's something I've noticed in my early 20s. It's like these weird patterns.
yeah. There's, I think, there's a lot of things we don't see because it's not beneficial to our survival. Like
Mhm.
our senses are built in such a way that we have practical
Yeah.
hunting, gathering information.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that like you can't take a mind altering substance which starts forming these new patterns, and you're just seeing reality in a different lens.
Yeah, like you'll see something you didn't see before because your monkey brain, didn't
Yeah,
think it was important.
we were talking about like, so I was going to ask you, what do you think happens after we die? I think we've already kind of touched on that. Like
True. Yeah.
you're really fascinated with the idea of reincarnation, which I am
Definitely.
too. I think um, I don't want to come back, but I think like if we're looking at, so at that point, like I see a couple of options. the ego can keep returning out of desire. It can
Mm,
keep like some Ram Dass kind of stuff. Like you return here because you're still missing something. You
yeah,
want something from the Dharma, and it's like so you keep repeating this cycle. Or you can return to the hive mind, which kills ego. Like the Adrian that you are ceases to exist, and the raw energy just
yeah.
forms with
My
this.
spirit soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, those are bad options. Like, I don't want to be part of everything, but I don't want to keep coming here and suffering. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe there's a third option. So it's like you have this nirvana, God, hive mind, and then you have like being alive. But then, like, what would it be like to not exist?
Mm,
Like to not exist? Because in the terms that we talk about what exists and doesn't exist, we're just talking about things that aren't here,
yeah.
things that aren't in this cycle. So maybe you can get kicked out of the cycle and stop existing, but that's only contextual to the
Within the
cycle.
cycle. Yeah. So then, what would actually happen then? It's an
That's
unknown.
that's an unknown, but
Yeah.
like that's my aim is to kind of maybe this is like maybe the so here I'll answer what I think about that. But where do you think art comes from? Like how do you write? What's your music process like?
Uh, Usually I just get an emotional kind of lingering feeling uh, based on an event or an event that's happened to somebody else or a story I've heard about, and then I try to like take that and put it into a musical context where it makes me feel the same way that I was already feeling. Uh, like if I wasn't feeling that anymore and I played that, like you take the feeling out of you, put it into a song or a piece of art, and then it's kind of captured forever in
Yeah.
time, and you can revisit that moment basically
And it incites if you did it correctly, it'll incite that same feeling.
in other people. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's like encapsulating. And to me, music is like very extremely spiritual, and
Oh yeah.
I have an extremely spiritual experience playing guitar almost every time, and it's very hard for me to explain to people because like I cannot remember. I basically black out during like a guitar solo where I'm actually like fully flowing.
You're in the zone.
Yeah, and I cannot remember
Mm.
what I played. I can remember kind of vaguely, but it's just like if you were to black out on alcohol or something, you know, it's like you can't recall. And to me, that's like I do feel like that is the time when I can channel some type of higher
Yeah.
level of consciousness, whether that's completely just me getting really into a flow state or that's something bigger. But I do think it's a bit bigger. I think it's also, I can experience like intense telekinesis with people on stage. And then I'll,
Yeah.
like last at the jam 2 nights ago, I'm watching a video and I play this lick and then another lick and then another lick, and the drummer is like completely matching the thing I'm playing and so easily. And I'm like, our brain waves were just locked in together right then. And people have had their MRIs done when they're playing music together, and their brains do sync up. And like, there's,
They're all seeing the same thing.
yeah, the
Yeah.
patterns match up. And so it is telekinesis. You're just not exchanging words. You're exchanging, or not telekinesis. What's
Telepathy.
telepathy? That's it. You're not exchanging words. You're just exchanging emotions, which is even more powerful than words.
Yeah, it's a language. Music
Yeah,
is a language.
absolutely. It lights up the same part of your brain.
Yeah.
And
You said you studied jazz too?
yeah,
Jazz is the ultimate form of this because it is you are having a telepathic conversation with everyone on stage. Like and like I'm glad you said that because like that in retrospect it's like yeah you go somewhere like seeing
yeah.
you play guitar like you slip into something.
Yeah, like I'm possessed.
Yeah,
Not to sound crazy, but
it's
there's
true, man.
something
I know
that's,
what you mean.
yeah,
It's it like yeah, and that is I you said you studied jazz. Like I love Miles Davis.
me too.
He's the father of music, like the
Absolutely.
music we have now.
Yeah.
And like that guy was a magician. Like he spoke this language um, that it conveys emotion, which is
Hmm.
more powerful than concepts and
It's more
ideas.
powerful than athleticism, than
Yeah,
performance, than entertainment, excitement. just the power to go, whoa, he just thrilled me in this way, and then he just made me so sad, and then he just made me so excited. And like I know musicians like this, like my friend Will Loney, the drummer, like he'll be looking at you and he'll go like, and he'll play something that makes you feel like this way, and he'll make facial expressions at you while he's playing, and you can just feel exactly what he's the way he's trying to fuck with you just for fun. And it's kind of like sometimes he's just doing it to show you that he can,
Yeah.
like he's that good at music, but it's really that he's that locked into like something even beyond music, you know
Yeah.
what I mean, where it's like artistry and expression, where you're like he is so being himself so hard through this music that I just know exactly what he's thinking and feeling, and he's like an open book in the best way, like
Yeah.
in that moment.
I completely agree with you. And that's where I was going with that is like we tap into something. Like I'm not a musician, but I'm working on a novel right now
Yeah,
and I do a lot of poetry. And like um an idea will come to me in the car and it's vague. You can't see it. And it's the same thing. Like I've talked to tons of artists, like musical artists, that experience the same thing, where it's like you have this rough outline of an idea, and you have to sit there and do work and transmute it into something tangible.
yeah,
But it doesn't start out that way. It's like a vague, fuzzy image,
yeah,
and then you do the art, the work of like bringing it to reality.
yeah. Sculptor is like the best example of this method of an artist, because they would just take a piece of stone and
Yeah,
turn it into something beautiful. This is what
that's a good
we're
example.
all doing with ideas. Nobody ever has an idea that's that great all the way through. They just have a good idea that they elaborate on, I think. Because,
Yeah,
like, I was listening to a podcast earlier today, like fucking Andrew Huberman talking about creativity. And
Huberman Lab.
yeah,
Yeah,
and he was talking about creativity, and that creative people just have, they don't have more good ideas, they just have more ideas.
yeah,
So you become better at filtering out what is a good idea and what's
yeah.
a bad idea. That's how you, some people can use their creativity, and some people are like the most creative motherfucker you know, but he just does a bunch of weird shit because he hasn't figured out how to decide what is this a good
I
idea
got
or a
friends like
bad
that
idea.
too. Yeah, where it's like, God, you're so fucking talented, but
Yeah,
they don't really want to do.
they don't give a shit.
They keep it in this spot, and then yeah,
Because they're almost like they are kind of above like the rat race that would make you even want to do that.
yeah, yeah. Some of the most talented, amazing artists are like no one's ever gonna hear about them because
Yeah,
it's they're just into it for that
for the
reason.
art,
Yeah,
not there's nothing else there. I think that's really pure.
it's a really beautiful thing. Yeah, like commercial art is not the best stuff ever.
No, and I think in music, it's so tough because the attention aspect of it is such a big element, and it some people really like being performers, and that's awesome, but I just become disenfranchised with it sometimes, because to me it's about, if I was blind and I heard it, that's what it's about. It's not about,
Yeah,
it all filters in, and I think that's great, but it's just basically like your guy, your singer songwriter, you telling you how they feel versus, somebody who's in a cover band and
hmm,
likes getting beers for free.
yeah,
Either one is just as good. I'm not judging anybody, but I think that the art of music, the way that music can be going off the rails, and people are like, I don't understand why pop music is the way it is, and it's because of this phenomenon of media and celebrity being more important than the artistry of the music. You know?
yeah. You want to get to that level of like this perceived importance, but it's
Yeah,
like yeah, the best artists are just doing, and it's really cool when someone's just doing what they love and doing it so raw, and then they get popular because people are just like, holy shit.
that's, yeah. Then it's like
Then
faith
it's
in
awesome.
humanity is kind of
Yeah,
like raised a little bit, like Miles Davis, and then you can see he does not give a fuck about the celebrity. He's on the, he's pissed about it. It's kind of ruined his life. It's messed up
yeah,
his life a little bit. And that's what I thought about being famous. Like the real ones who get famous, they're just kind of like, man, this has kind of fucked up my life, and they're disenfranchised by it because none of these people are actually really know them. You know what I mean? They just have this idea of them. You just
yeah,
like the idea. Like I couldn't imagine going to a meet and greet
right.
with fans if I ever, for some reason, was super famous, and they're just like, "Oh my God, I love you." It'd be like, like, do you know me? It would
Mm,
just be so weird, and that's what happens to like people like Prince, artists like Prince,
yeah,
where he's just constantly trying to like let people know you can't just control me. Like I am going to be exactly myself.
This is gonna kind of sound harsh, but like in a way too, like you failed to convey yourself. So
Yeah,
it's like it's gonna feel like a personal failure. Like I
yeah,
didn't show off who I was exactly.
yeah,
It's like
totally.
I created this image that's not authentic.
Yeah, that would hurt so much because
Yeah,
then you feel nobody likes to be misunderstood, and if everybody misunderstands you, you're walking around misunderstood. Like you're like, if the truth comes out about who I am, then I have no fans because nobody actually likes me. They just like fucking Bryce Hall,
yeah,
whoever the fuck I'm gonna pretend to be today.
and you're yeah, and especially in the and then like in the upper echelon, you have all this reason not to speak out about like injustice that you see
Yeah,
because it's like all of this goes away.
yeah, you have so much to lose.
It's crazy.
There's some great. I mean, the greatest art is like people have nothing to lose, just like
Yeah.
I have nothing else. Like Mozart's like fucking dying and shit, or Beethoven's blind and or deaf, and he's still writing. It's like why would you even? It's just because he loved it.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
A real artist, like I'm sure you can relate. It's like I'm not doing this because I want to. I'm doing it because I have to.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
have a choice.
it's survival mode.
Yeah.
It involves playing the guitar every day because otherwise, uh, it's a way to organize your thoughts. Like if
It's
you could,
meditation.
it is totally it's meditation. It's so it's like the ultimate tool, and I think it's a huge gift for like mental health because you can just unfrazzle your mind most of the time because if you pick it up and
Wow.
play, your brain knows. There's been so many times where I was so desperate to play a really good guitar solo that my brain, when I have the guitar in my hands, is like fight or flight mode into creativity, kind of, where it's like we have to focus 100% on this fun, creative thing, and that is just turns off all the bullshit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's all there is to do in life is make
Yeah,
art. What else are you doing if you're
that's
not
how I
doing
feel.
that?
That's why I'm like confused by
Yeah.
a lot of things because I'm like, why would you?
Why are you doing
Why are you
anything
interested
else?
in that
Yeah.
necessarily? Curiosity and art and like that's why I think science is great. I think
Sorry. Yeah.
because curiosity, exploration, these are all things that I'm extremely like. If I could go and explore a part of a
Mhm.
fucking cave that had never been explored before, that would thrill the shit out of me. If I could discover that thing or learn about someone else's
Yeah.
discovery in science, that thrills me. Those are like the genuine things that we should all be like coming together over.
Yeah.
It could be so easy instead of like that guy's wearing skinny jeans. You know what I mean? Like the type of shit I've heard in my life, people judging other people for is psychotic. Like more
Yeah.
than somebody being schizophrenic or something. It's like the hating on a guy because he's wearing a certain type of pants. It's like, are you lost, brother? Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're
It's like,
just
what are you doing with your life?
yeah, and it's like that doesn't make anybody happier or make you feel
It's
good.
not making you feel good.
You're
It's not
pissed.
doing
Yeah.
anything. Yeah. Yeah. Life is crazy. It's a wild ride. I think about this stuff all the time and I can't really turn it off. So it's cool having people to talk about it with.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd love to do this again sometime.
Yeah,
This is a lot
man.
of fun. We covered a lot of ground, but I'm sure like there's a lot more we could still talk about. So
Definitely. Thanks for having me, dude.
yeah, of course. You're welcome back anytime. And we
Awesome.
usually will once I have someone on, we'll like make it like a rotating thing. Like we'll get someone else in, like a third,
Oh,
like a
okay.
mutual
Yeah.
friend of ours or something, sit
Yeah.
down.
Throw them in the loop.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, man, check out Adrian Sanders. I'll put a link up to his music down below. Go check him out. He's a very talented dude. And I can definitely see how you're slipping into this thing. It's like and it's necessary for you. Like when
Yeah.
an artist is on stage and they're not having a good time.
Yeah. You can see when they're not locked
Yeah.
into anything except their own head, and then you're like, well, that's
Yeah.
where I'm at, man. I was hoping you could get there for me,
Yeah.
and I can live vicariously. You know what I mean? That's kind of it's the energy exchange that happens sometimes.
I feel so blessed to be a part of such a like to be surrounded by so many talented people,
Yeah,
like
me too.
making genuine, beautiful art with their lives.
Me too, man.
Um, like for me personally, like I moved out when I was 18, and I got away from like the church, and I moved out, and like because I was homeschooled, like everyone I knew was in my church,
Yeah.
everybody. So like I had to completely restart my life
Yeah.
and live music. I went to East Room for
No
a
way.
show, and it saved my life. Like that's like 2015,
Wow.
2016. And I started going to live music all the time, got involved with the scene. I'm like, holy shit, this is church. Like there's this spiritual energy and it's
Yeah.
way cooler.
Yep.
And I can like there's like there's like this intelligence to it. Like you have like a telepathic bond with the people on stage with, but you do with your
Yeah.
audience too. Jimi
Yeah.
Hendrix was great at this.
Yeah.
Hendrix would put everybody in a fucking trance.
Yeah.
And then he'd do like burn his guitar. Like he did these weird little rituals. And it's like, whoa, you're participating in something when you
Hmm.
do that. That's
Yeah.
like it's like people are telling me all the time, it's like I don't believe in magic. It's like, do you know what that means? Like, do you know what you're saying? Because it's like I'm making these lip flap sounds and somehow you understand
Yeah.
meaning out of it. Like that's magic.
Yeah.
Music is magic.
Yeah. It's very magical.
Like the Nazis were really big into occult shit, and they took the swastika, which was like the symbol, not the original one, but like or the original one was like the symbol of peace,
Hmm.
and they flipped it around, they inversed the symbol because they're all occultists and they
Yeah.
know that like symbols have power, and like they were huge into this, using it in a negative way. And it's
Yeah.
like everything we do is magic. People don't believe in magic because it's right here. It's right under your nose.
They're expecting something more fantastic than what
Yeah.
they're actually experiencing as magic.
It becomes a point where it's like there's no point in even talking about it as magic because all the magic I'm talking about is just psychology stuff.
Yeah.
You can just talk about this in scientific terms and it's like all of a sudden everyone agrees with you what you're
Yeah.
saying. If saying it's magic is almost like you're just being difficult because that's not how intellectual people talk about it.
Yeah. But
I
they
just
might reach the same
yeah,
exact point.
I just do it because like I love the poetry of it.
Yeah.
Like it adds this special thing to life where it's like it's not mundane, it's magic.
Yeah. That's what's the special things are magic.
Yeah. Or we talk about it in terms of purely fiction, like shooting fire out of your hands or levitating.
Right.
It's like we talk about it in like impossible terms.
Abstracted
Yeah.
kind of magic. Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I've definitely seen so many moments where musicians are playing or improvising, and like I know that guy. Like, how the fuck? Like, I know he's practiced a lot, but like, he just popped off, and you feel like they're godly in a way.
Yeah.
Like they have this energy about them, where it's godly. It's like, and it's something they're like busting out, and everybody I've talked to who has had that experience says that they just feel like something is flowing into them, and that they're basically out of control. Like they spent all this time practicing different sounds and scales and whatever, but eventually they have this moment where they are out of control and
Yeah.
they're having a beautiful moment where it's just happening and they're playing it could be very technical, difficult stuff, but it's still kind of just happening to them. And you see that, and they have this energy that's kind of like I said, godly, and they're channeling something. And I don't know if that's just like the ultimate flow state is how you could scientifically kind of try to describe it, but it's also like you're hearing all these influences of musicians that they've respected and that they've listened to and transcribed, and it's almost like these people are like with them in a spiritual sense, or in just the sense that there's the sound of these people is so locked into their brain that they're channeling these other people. You know what I mean? You hear a Miles Davis lick, then you hear a Coltrane lick in this keyboard, and then he goes does this crazy
Yeah.
organ lick that's this straight up blues thing, and you're like, the fact that he's playing so authentic and genuine and respecting all these people in a real way is why it sounds so good, which almost means like, I don't know, there just could be some wild higher energy of musical that happens when people are improvising.
Dude,
I wish I could scan people's brains and like figure it out.
athletes are tapping into this flow state too, where
Oh
they're not
yeah.
even thinking about what they're doing. Like they're just streamlined into the activity.
Effortless mastery, I think, is like a term for it.
Yeah.
Because Kenny Werner, I think he's got a book about it, and at Berkeley they taught a class called Effortless Mastery, which I thought was total bullshit at first, but then I started realizing that I like do this just because I'm
Yeah.
like kind of lazy about, and I want things to just feel so good and easy that I don't have to try hard, so I don't feel like I'm struggling, because then only then can I enjoy the experience, and that's like effortless mastery is kind of like something like that, where it's like it just flows out of me effortlessly, and I put in the time, And so that concept is really big. I think that's probably what you're talking about with the football
Yeah.
players too.
Yeah, it's like you have to there's something to be said about like muscle memory. Like you have to know the instrument.
Yeah.
You have to know your body if you're an athlete.
Yeah.
And it's like um like again, like I'm not an athlete, I'm not a musician, but I'm a poet, and I have a level of like mastery over English. Like I've been writing stuff since I was like a kid, you know. And like I get even though it's like it's slower, like I still get into like a flow state.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like, oh, this makes sense. And then I do this thing sometimes where like when I write something, I'll look at it again years later, and I'm like, I didn't mean that's like deeper than I meant for it to be. I did something I didn't know I did
You
that.
didn't even take the right meaning from your own
Yeah.
words until later.
Yeah. Like I'm like, oh, so I didn't do that. Something did that.
And now you've come to understand what
Right.
it means.
Yeah. It's nuts. There was this time where um I'll tell you a story real quick. Uh I took acid with my friend Phil. You met Phil earlier. This was a few years ago, and our other buddy David, and they were like, "Hey, play Smash Bros with us." Which like I'm not good at a lot of games, but that's my game.
Yeah.
Like I'm really good at Smash Bros. And I'm like, I don't really want to. Like the controller feels weird. Like it's not right.
Yeah.
It's not right. And they're like, no, come on, just do it. I'm like, okay, fine. And David starts telling me about the zone and getting in the zone, which is something we've all talked about. We've all heard about it.
Right.
He's like, no, no, no. The zone is a real place. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's like this thing, like what we're talking about. Like he explained it with athletes. Like athletes tap into this. And as he's telling me about this, like I'm listening to him and I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, and I'm doing way better.
Oh shit.
Like the more disassociated I'm getting,
Yeah.
the better I'm getting at the game. And all of a sudden, like after a while of doing this, I'm doing like frame perfect inputs. Like I'm playing better than I've never played this good in my life. I'm like doing shit. And I'm not even like am I doing that? Like it feels like I'm just watching someone
Yeah, you're
else
just
doing
like
it.
mildly confused what's
Yeah.
happening.
And it's like, holy shit, this is real. This is happening. And like I think that was a combination of this flow state and like drugs. Like the conscious mind is just this very tip of the iceberg.
Totally.
And, like the thing that like makes a human is like so much deeper than that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It's good talking to you, dude.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again soon.
Definitely.
Alice, check out Adrian and his stuff. You can catch him at first Fridays at Underdog. And we'll see you next week.